Hi, I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. So Kamino was a crucial planet during the Clone Wars, serving as a home base for the Republic's cloning operations and a birthplace for the clone army. With Kamino being such an important Republic asset, it was even the target of a massive separatist attack in what was known as the Battle of Kamino, and if you want to see a video on the Battle of Kamino, I'll throw a link in one of these corners. I do have a video on that. But what happened to Kamino after the end of the war and the fall of the Republic? So before I start, I'd like to add that we don't know a ton about what happened to Kamino after the Clone Wars in canon, so I'm really going to be focusing more on the Legends story. By the way, for those of you who are curious, basically after the war in canon, the clone facilities were shut down, and that's pretty much all we know. However, in Legends, there's a much larger, in-depth story as to what happened to Kamino after the war. So yeah, from this point to the end of the video, I'll pretty much exclusively be talking about Legends. So, Kamino, the center of the Republic's cloning operations without the Republic. Well, we do know for the first few years of the Empire's existence, the cloning facilities were left relatively intact, being able to sort of function independently, take other contracts, and act mainly as they were acting before the Clone Wars. And these cloning facilities had a lot of resources, since shortly after the war, the Empire stopped ordering more clone troopers, preferring to instead start conscripting regular humans. This move left a lot of Kaminoans rather bitter. They saw what was left of the Republic as having abandoned them. Losing their biggest contract hurt the planet financially. So the Kaminoans went about beginning a rebellion. However, anyone who's seen Episode 2 knows that the Kaminoans aren't necessarily good soldiers. They're very technologically gifted and very capable when it comes to biology, but when it comes to combat, they're not really built for that. But they can build creatures that are. So an entire clone army began being built in secret, with the intention of being used in a revolution against the Empire. They were bred right under the Empire's noses at the same facility that was producing clone troopers during the Clone Wars. When the Empire finally discovered this new clone army being built for a rebellion, they quickly moved to stamp out this new threat. But by the time the Empire had figured it out, a small element of these clone troopers were ready to fight. This created a pretty awful situation for the few stormtroopers who were still Fett clones, having to fight their brothers. So as Imperial troops arrived to pacify this Kaminoan rebellion, they were met by an army of clone troopers in Phase 1 armor with jetpacks. Still, after intense fighting, the vast numbers of the Imperial military were able to destroy this Kaminoan rebellion. It was decided quickly afterwards that Kamino couldn't be left to its own devices, that it was too much of a threat, so the Empire clamped down on the planet. The cloning facilities became firmly under the control of the Empire, and all cloning operations were run through them. The independence that the cloners had before this rebellion was gone. We then see Kamino being used for cloning experiments by the Empire, which generally involved cloning Force users. This, on top of a massive Imperial presence, turned Kamino almost into a military world that wasn't serving a massive military purpose, since the cloning programs were mostly experimental. The only thing that came out of these cloning programs was a clone of Starkiller, Vader's apprentice, who would go on to serve the rebellion anyway, so really wouldn't be much use to the Empire. Still, the Imperial cloning facilities on Kamino would continue to run these experiments until shortly before the Battle of Yavin, when they fell under an attack by a rebel fleet. This rebel fleet, led by a Starkiller clone bred on Kamino, was able to breach the Imperial forces in orbit and descend down to the planet's surface. In a brief planetary invasion that was able to very briefly gain control of the cloning facilities, the rebels were able to do significant damage to the facilities. After the rebel fleet leaves Kamino, we don't know much of the story past then. It's assumed that the cloning facilities were rebuilt and continued to be part of Imperial cloning experiments, but that's not really confirmed by any sources. So if you enjoyed what you saw here today, or just want more sci-fi discussions, head down below with the subscribe button and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. Also, don't forget to like and leave a comment. Tell me what you hope to see in canon when they flesh out what happened with Kamino after the war. Would you like to see something similar to Legends, or something totally different? Tell me your thoughts down in the comments. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.